and it's very much appreciated. I think that it's a great opportunity for us to all come together and have a sounding board for how folks are feeling out here in Rosamond. And what I understand by some of the discussions that have happened here in the last couple of months, that some people have expressed concerns about the solar developments and the dust that may or may not be caused by the solar development. And so my field reps, Brian and Ryan, they've been here both at different times, and they also conveyed to me the concerns that were expressed. And so what we did, Loralei and I, we called a meeting of all the solar developers that develop out here in the Rosamond area. And we sat around and had a round table with them and talked about what they're doing to mitigate dust, what challenges they have, and potentially what we can do in the future along those lines. In addition to that, I drove around and toured every single solar facility that was here in Eastern Kern. One of the things that I took away from the meeting, I would say, is that no one solar development is the same as the other. They all come with their own challenges when it comes to dust mitigation and development. Some of these sites that were fallow farmland that had been irrigated or farmed recently, it was very easy to put down some seeds, some native grasses, some alfalfa, other types of barley, whatever it might be, and to have that take very quickly to the soil and grow, start to grow, and by doing that, the roots create a binding agent for the dust and helps to stabilize the soil. Other areas, if the farmland hasn't been farmed recently, have a lot more challenges because the ground is very dry. That requires more water. It's more difficult to get it to get the seeds to germinate and begin to grow. Other properties, say if they were, for instance, an area where they were storing equipment for farming operations, the soil was very compacted, and it was next to impossible to get anything on that side to grow anything. And so what they're using in that case are soil binding agents, soil glue basically, that glues the soil and stabilizes it. Some are using hydro mulch, which is like a wet mulch that also has a binding agent for the soil. 70-mile-an-hour winds, you had Highway 14, that was closed. I don't believe that dust event was caused by the solar fields. I think when you have that kind of wind, you're going to have dust in the desert. Now, in addition to that, a lot of things have changed out in the west side of Rosamond as far as farming activity is concerned. The lack of water and other economic factors have caused a lot of ground that used to be farmed to now sit fallow. That becomes particularly problematic when it comes to wind if the soil had been plowed and then left to be farmed later, and that activity never occurred. That soil is very loose, and if the wind blows, it's going to pick that up and blow it. Yes, ma'am?
I called and spoke to Brian. You've never called me back. I have letters from Kern County back in 1997 that the farmers would be charged could be charged a $10,000 a day fine if they didn't do the fields properly, which they don't. I called air quality Friday at 11 o'clock. The farmers were tilling the fields out on 60th. No water. You could see the dirt going up in the air for 5 miles away. Now, next month they're supposed to have a symposium in Bakersfield with the federal government coming in on it. But what the problem is why isn't Kern County air quality going after these people? Because the fields out on 70th, 90th, and 110th, like you said, is nothing but dust, and nothing is ever done.
So we do actually go out and we do make contact. Did someone make contact with you from my staff?
Somebody called me at 3 o'clock on Friday when the wind was blowing, and they get off at 3:30 and they can't come out and check it. There's nobody in this area, when you report when these people are doing things, to come out here. They're in Isabella, they're over in Mojave. There's nobody around this area. And you get excuses. Like I said, I got letters from 97 from Air Quality that they could get a $10,000 a day fine if they don't do the fields properly and not till it in the wind.
We have fined people, we have issue violations, so it's not like we haven't done anything. Maybe we have not done enough, but we're working on to do it also.
I know that they do issue violations because I also receive complaints from farmers who have been cited. So that, they do. I think with limited resources, they go out and they do what they can.
It's kind of written, kind of technical when you go online, so I'm not sure I understand you. So could you explain?
Correctly. You can see it when they're leaving their property, going to your property. That's basically what it is. It's not particularly complicated. We go out, we look, we do the emission rate readings, and we see that's significantly coming off one person's property to another, and it's not 7-mile winds as everybody just all over the place, then we will sign. And that's it.
And what is the process by which you go through that? What's the enforcement process look like? What are the fines? What's that look like here on our side? Because there may be people here from LA County that is a different air district, and they have different rules, and they have different fines and different structures. So I just thought it would be useful for you to explain the Kern County structure.
Well, in terms of structure, the fines are base. We start low, $1,000, and we go up from there. And as the person is worse and worse and doesn't control the dust off their property, the fine will get higher and higher. And yes, it can be as high as $10,000.
And does that have to go to a board hearing before it can be opposed?
Normally we do it is considered mutual settlement where we should make a violation and give the person a chance to pay the fine. If not, we want to go to court.
So you don't have to have a public hearing in front of the Air Board's board in order to do that?
No.
Okay, so you can issue a letter of violation when you call it?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I just wanted
We have a
us
couple
all
of
to get
And
clear.
how many of these air quality people have come out and have been told to turn a blind eye when it comes to some of this dust, this fugitive dust?
Nobody.
Because last month, or 2 months ago, that Benjamin New at Solar 1 and 2 bragged about how he's never been fined for any of the dirt blowing.
We're going to do everything we can, and we went out and we made sure that all of these solar projects are standing up right now. And we will take those comments. But I want to distinguish out projects. Are you going to let me finish before you put your arm down? I've seen that you want to ask a question. Would you let me finish now?
Sure.
Thank you. We want to distinguish what Glenn is doing, which is handling the air district stuff that we don't permit, and things that have gone through permits where I have a long list of mitigation measures that we can enforce. And we want your complaints, and we want to know what's happening. But I don't think those two things are the same. I think those two things are different. And if you would like me to call up First Solar and chastise them for saying that, the solar people who are here know that I'm the first person to get on the phone if any solar project or any wind project or any developer is disrespectful or somehow thinks they're getting away with things, because they're not. So I apologize if you think we're doing nothing, because that is not true.
I heard about what LA County's doing. They are looking into changing their codes during the construction process, so they're not allowing the clear scraping of the ground.
Right.
And from what I've heard from some of the folks, were saying that they don't have to remove the root balls. They took all the native vegetation and they mowed it when they first started the renewable energy process. To me, that seems like that would be the better solution, to leave that in place, because they can take their pile drivers and, I was told they don't have to make an elevation change. So have you guys considered putting that into the requirements?
We have. For new projects, we
Yeah,
have.
and that's what I was talking about. It depends on the project site, what it is you're dealing with. If you're coming out and you're doing it on farmland that has been plowed, you're going to have a lot bigger problems than going out to a site like you're talking about or to a piece of farmland that just had its last crop of alfalfa harvested, and you still have
Some moisture.
and also the layer of roots and grass.
Kind of chemical, what do you call this?
Soil
Dust
binders
pallets.
and pine tar.
Chemical dust pallets. We're going to work our way through that. We're also going to require them to give us that plan, and we're going to hold them to that plan as they move forward. And we're going to use all the information that we now have. There's some good things. We're not going to put mulch underneath. It's a fire hazard. If LA wants to do that, let them. But there are some really good ideas that are now working that SunPower is doing, where they're going to use mulch around it as more of a, let's keep it down, keeping the wind down, more of a windbreak. And we're going to compile all of those ideas and working with the next phases and the new developers and saying, look, we've now learned some things. These guys have been unfortunately been the lead, but the people have helped us sort out what didn't work. And so yes, we're absolutely going to start incorporating that, and we're going to create some best practices that are better.
Once again, I appreciate everybody giving us the opportunity to be here. I know that there have been some questions at the RMAC about the medical marijuana dispensaries, and there are currently 4 dispensaries that we know of in the county that are operating in violation of Measure G, which was the voter enacted measure that the Board of Supervisors put on the ballot back in 2012. Unfortunately, 3 of those 4 are in Rosamond.
Right.
And there's, we can imagine where the bulk of the clientele are coming from that are going to all those dispensaries. But I want to talk a little bit about what the county is doing to enforce Measure G right now, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the legal challenges to Measure G that the dispensaries attorneys have brought, and give you an idea where we're going to go forward. Now, I'm not an attorney, and so I'm going to read off some notes here. First of all, what we're doing to enforce Measure G is we have our Code Compliance Division and also our Sheriff's Department that are both working in tandem. And what they're doing is they're monitoring the dispensaries, and the county code enforcement are engaged in obtaining what's called inspection warrants. They have to go into the premises, they get a warrant to go into the premises and to inspect their operations and basically see what they're doing. And so the Board of Supervisors, we have authorized our county council to prosecute a civil lawsuit to enforce the county's zoning ordinance, which includes Measure G against a particular dispensary that's in Oildale. We had some success with that. In that particular lawsuit, we obtained a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction against that dispensary in Oildale, and that was called the Green Coast Cooperative, and also against its operators and the landlord. That injunction quantity or form for use. It also prohibits the defendants from advertising the sale, distribution, or trade, etc., etc., etc. And so now that we have obtained that particular restraining order, we've now authorized our county counsel's office to go after the other 4 dispensaries that we know are operating. All the other ones have closed down, but those 4 continue to be problematic. So basically now we have a win in court, we have a roadmap for how it is that we're going to start enforcing Measure G on those dispensaries that don't want to close.
Is that in federal court or?
No, it's in state court. Yeah, it's in state court. Now, the status of Measure G. Measure G was as I said, was the voter-approved initiative that restricts dispensaries to anywhere but an M2 or an M3 zone. And the dispensaries hired attorneys, and actually two of the dispensaries here in Rosamond, Organic Health Solutions and All Green Collectives, they were both petitioners in that CEQA case, along with some others. We had a setback in court on August 9th. The Kern County Superior Court ruled that the county was required to comply with CEQA prior to submitting a Measure G to the voters. What that means is they said that we didn't do environmental work before we put the measure on the ballot. Now, of course, we disagree with that. In the early hearings, we said that that project was exempt from CEQA. However, the judges ruled that we should have done some type of an environmental study on that. And so the court, however, did not invalidate Measure G. They have another court date that's coming up on September 20th. Now, on September 20th, the court is going to consider potential remedies, and here are the ones that we believe are there. First would be annulling the board's decision to place Measure G on the ballot and the subsequent election. So that would mean that Measure G would be invalidated, and we would go back to having that not in our zoning. The judge may allow Measure G to stand while the county does a CEQA study, and they also may stay the enforcement of Measure G while the county complies with CEQA. So they could either say, while you're doing your environmental study, Measure G is valid, or while you're doing the environmental study, it is not valid. Now,
the question is,
Yeah.
prior to August 9th, in the negative ruling, I got an email from Loralei. I'd asked a question, it's in the minutes here. Did the vote of the people on Measure G hamstring the board from requesting a total ban? And she said that no, but you have to do CEQA to have the total ban. And I guess the question is, wouldn't that behoove the county to go and have Measure G annulled, and then you could do the total ban without a CEQA?
If it was invalidated and we did want to enact a total ban, yes, we would have to do an environmental impact report. And that's something that we can see from Judge Twisselman, how he's dealing with currently Measure G. But let me tell you what some of our options are, because there's some other things. Okay, so what do we do if Measure G is set aside? Here's some options. We could appeal the decision and request a stay until the case is heard on appeal. We could enforce the county's zoning ordinance without Measure G, which means that medical marijuana dispensaries are not, quote, permitted uses under the ordinance and therefore not allowed anywhere in the incorporated areas. In other words, our zoning ordinance, it has to be, you have to have listed in there what a permitted use is. The dispensaries are not permitted uses, and so we believe that we could actually enforce the closure of the dispensaries simply because they're not in our zoning ordinance. A few things have happened in court. Riverside, for instance, that did a total ban. We were waiting to see what was going to happen there to give us some clarity on whether or not you can have a total and complete ban, and that was upheld. So really, in other words, if Measure G is invalidated, we believe that we wouldn't have to put a full ban either on the board's agenda, vote on that, or go to the people and ask them to. Because remember, the reason we went to the people in the first place was because the board enacted a total ban at the Board of Supervisors level, but the dispensaries went out and collected 26,000 signatures to invalidate that action. And so we had a choice: go to the people or invalidate our own ordinance. And so we opted to go to the people with Measure G. But now we believe that even without an ordinance, because it isn't specifically listed in our ordinance, they are not listed as pharmacies, they're not considered pharmacies, and part of what the board did in enacting Measure G and enacting the ban made it very clear that we do not consider them as pharmacies. So therefore, we believe that we can close them down with our existing ordinance. And I am not an attorney, I may get some of this a little bit wrong, but basically the Measure G is considered a project, and it's a county-wide project. We're a county of 81 plus 100 square miles, and they believe that there are environmental implications to banning the dispensaries. For instance, say somebody has to travel from Ridgecrest to an M2 or an M3 zone somewhere down in Bakersfield. Okay, there's mileage, pollution, impacts traffic, etc. Believe me, I don't agree. I think that that we, as I said in the beginning of this, we made statements that it was exempt from CEQA, but and the dispensaries and any of the representatives that came down to the board hearings to protest Measure G never brought up CEQA once. Never once.
49 arrests total, and deputies responded to 1,192 calls for service.
What kind of drug offenses?
It does specify.
To traffic coming out of the dispensaries, driving recklessly, increased speeds on the areas around the dispensaries, loitering around the dispensaries, and the fact that, medical marijuana being resold down the street to our students and youth of our community. What do you feel the sheriff's office, in cooperation with the highway patrol, could do to remedy some of these problems for us?
Well,
And I was talking to one of our constituents yesterday, and he wanted to know, two things I wanted to ask. Supervisor Perez, scrivner about what can be done about developing that area. It's still going to cost $35,000 in fees to build something there, number one. And number two, he was totally opposed to ACDC being there. He wanted to know what's going to be done. He noticed that they're doing, his business is just one business over from the sheriff's department, but they seem to be doing walk-bys. There's nothing there to do. And if they're walking by his shop, why are they walking by and what are they checking out?
I haven't seen a huge amount of people walking in the area. I'm not there at night though. The people driving, I agree, they don't drive best. We do have a couple deputies that are working evenings that are doing lots and lots of traffic stops wherever, some are in that area. Highway patrol, I know they get down when they can. They have a huge area also. A lot of it is what we can catch. But then again, we also can't sit there and just wait and stop every car from there, because that's violating things also. Just like you can't sit at a bar and wait for every car to leave the bar and stop. So we are monitoring that, dealing with it as best we can, but it's case by case. Like I said, traffic down on Diamond, we still have the one Albany, the ADDC was the busier one, now it's
Or pass our budget, and I'd like to read a few comments just for the general manager's report, budget report. Just to give you an idea, it's a lot of pages, so I'll get the highlights. The proposed fiscal year 2013-2014 recommended budget of $7,397,130 is submitted for your consideration. The budget was prepared in conjunction with the Departments of Finance, Operations, Administration, and the General Manager. This budget reflects the major funds: water and sewer with revenues totaling $6,840,500, lighting, LLAD 2, park and recreation, and park CSA maintenance funds make up the remaining portion of the $7,397,130 budget revenues. Revenues experienced a small increase of approximately 8.85% due to factors such as rate increase placed into effect 4 years ago and the right sizing of the district by reducing staff and costs. In addition, anticipated savings of the tightening of the belt. The expenses are totaling $5,171,857. Capital projects totaling $912,000 include $300,000 in capacity at the water bank, $512,000 in replacement operations, and additional $100,000 to construct road and platform at the wastewater treatment plant, ponds, and site preparation for solar. The debt, the annual payments total $1,486,780. However, we were able to reduce our overall debt by $1,673,760. This reduction is from $16,176,271 to $14,502. 511. The cash reserves are currently $6,247,273. These reserves do not include the $1,164,450 needed for non-operational cash requirements that lenders require of the district. These set-asides are to cover payments on outstanding loans in the event something goes wrong with the district's budget. So the budget that the board approved reflects a $148,823 in the black. Now, if you have any detailed questions, I do have a copy, one copy of the detailed budget.